Imagine waking up millions of miles from Earth. You don't remember your name. You don't know where you are. You don't remember why you're there. And when you finally look around the spacecraft, you discover something terrifying. Everyone else is dead. This is how Project Hail Mary begins, a science fiction survival story about one ordinary science teacher who suddenly finds himself responsible for saving humanity. Ryland Grace slowly wakes from an induced coma aboard a spacecraft traveling through deep space. His body is weak. His memory is almost completely gone. He doesn't even understand how he ended up there. The spacecraft's systems begin helping him recover. Little by little, Grace discovers where he is. He's traveling toward the Tau Ceti star system, almost 12 light-years away from Earth. But why? Grace searches the ship and discovers the bodies of his two crewmates. He is the only survivor. At first, he has no idea what happened to them. Then his memories begin returning. He remembers Earth. He remembers being a middle school science teacher. He remembers refusing to become an astronaut. And he remembers the terrifying reason humanity needed someone to travel into space. Scientists had discovered something impossible happening to the sun. Its energy output was decreasing. The planet was beginning to cool. And if the process continued, Earth would eventually become too cold to support human civilization. But Earth wasn't the only planet facing this problem. Stars throughout the galaxy were losing energy. Scientists eventually discovered the cause. A mysterious microscopic organism was surrounding stars and feeding on their energy. They called the organisms astrophage. The creatures were consuming stellar energy at an incredible rate, and if humanity couldn't find a way to stop them, Earth would eventually freeze. Scientists discovered that one star appeared to be immune. Tau Ceti. Its energy output remained stable. That made it the most important clue humanity had. So a desperate mission was created. Project Hail Mary. 3 astronauts were sent toward Tau Ceti to discover why the star was surviving and find a way to save the sun. Grace was one of them. But now he remembers the terrible reality. The mission is one way. The spacecraft traveled nearly 12 light-years away from Earth. Even a message sent from the ship would take more than 11 years to reach home. There is no quick rescue. There is no backup crew. If Grace fails, humanity may have no second chance. As his memories return, Grace begins examining the astrophage. He realizes the organism isn't simply a parasite. It has an incredible ability to absorb and store energy. That could potentially be used against the organisms surrounding the sun. But first, Grace needs to understand how astrophage works. He begins conducting experiments aboard the spacecraft. He calculates temperatures, measures energy levels, tests chemical reactions, and slowly, he starts discovering the rules governing the organism. Then something completely unexpected happens. Grace detects another spacecraft. At first, he assumes it's part of the mission. But the signal doesn't come from Earth. It's coming from somewhere else. Grace approaches cautiously, and inside the mysterious spacecraft, he discovers another survivor. But this isn't a human being. It's an alien. The creature introduces itself through a strange system of sounds and vibrations. Grace is terrified, then fascinated. The alien calls himself Rocky. Rocky has traveled from another star system for exactly the same reason Grace has. His planet is dying too. The astrophage are consuming his star. Rocky was sent to find a solution. And suddenly, Grace realizes something incredible. He isn't alone. There is another intelligent species facing the same extinction-level threat. The two beings can't speak the same language. They can't even survive in the same environment without protection. Grace needs a breathable atmosphere and moderate temperatures. Rocky requires completely different conditions. But science gives them a way to communicate. They begin exchanging information, numbers, measurements, chemical formulas, scientific concepts. Slowly, they teach each other how their worlds work. And for the first time in human history, a human being is communicating directly with an extraterrestrial intelligence. Rocky has technology Grace has never seen before. His spacecraft is made from an incredibly strong material called xenonite. His species has developed completely different approaches to engineering and biology. But Rocky isn't interested in conquering Earth. He wants to save his own planet. Grace wants to save his. And both realize they may need each other. Because the answer to saving one star may also be the answer to saving them all. Grace and Rocky now understand that they have found the most important clue in the entire mission. The reason Tau Ceti is still healthy is not because the star is naturally resistant to astrophage. Something on one of its planets is fighting the organism. They investigate the planet and discover a microscopic predator living in its atmosphere. This organism feeds on astrophage. Grace names it Taumiba. If they can collect enough of it and introduce it into the infected environments around the Sun and Rocky's star, they may be able to save both civilizations. But collecting the organism is extremely dangerous. The planet's atmosphere is hostile, and the sample exists high above the surface. Grace and Rocky build an enormous collection system using Rocky's incredibly strong xenonite material. They lower it into the atmosphere and wait. For a moment, everything works. Then the spacecraft suddenly becomes unstable. The collection system is caught in the planet's gravity. Grace struggles to recover it before the entire mission is lost. The situation becomes even worse when contaminated astrophage begins spreading through the ship. The fuel system is compromised. Grace is thrown through the spacecraft and loses consciousness. Rocky doesn't hesitate. He breaks out of his protective enclosure and risks his own life to save Grace. When Grace finally wakes up, he discovers Rocky badly injured. For the first time, Grace realizes just how much his alien friend has sacrificed for him. He stays beside Rocky and refuses to leave him. While Rocky recovers, Grace works alone. He studies the Taumiba and tries to create a version capable of surviving in the extreme conditions around the stars they need to save. After countless experiments, he finally succeeds. The solution works. Humanity has a chance. Rocky's species has a chance. The two friends have accomplished what the entire mission was created to achieve. But there is still one final problem. Grace doesn't have enough fuel to return to Earth. He has accepted that he may have to die in space. Rocky refuses to accept that. He offers Grace enough of his own astrophage fuel to make the journey home, even though doing so means Rocky will have to wait much longer before returning to his own planet. Grace is overwhelmed. He finally admits that he wasn't actually ready to die. He wanted to go home. He wanted to see Earth again. And for the first time, Grace understands what courage really means. It's not about being fearless. It's about admitting that you're afraid and still choosing to do what needs to be done. The two prepare to separate. Grace heads toward Earth. Rocky begins his journey back toward Arid. For a moment, it seems like everything has worked perfectly. Then Grace discovers something terrifying. The Taumiba has evolved. It can now escape the containers designed to hold it. And there's an even bigger problem. Rocky's entire spacecraft is made from xenonite. If the Taumiba reaches Rocky's fuel supply, it will destroy the astrophage keeping his ship moving. Rocky will be stranded in space. And eventually, he will die. Grace now faces an impossible choice. Continue toward Earth and become the man who saved humanity. Or turn around and save the friend who helped him accomplish the mission. For most of his life, Grace avoided responsibility whenever the stakes became too high. But now he doesn't hesitate. He sends the Taumiba samples and all the research back toward Earth in automated probes. Humanity will still receive the cure. Then Grace turns the Hail Mary around. He chooses Rocky, and that decision changes everything. Grace turns the Hail Mary around. He knows exactly what this means. He is giving up his chance to return to Earth. But he refuses to let Rocky die. After the long journey, Grace finally reaches Rocky's damaged spacecraft. Rocky is still alive, but his fuel is disappearing rapidly. Grace manages to rescue him, and the two friends are reunited. For Grace, the decision is simple. Earth already has the Taumiba samples in his research. Humanity has a chance to save itself. Rocky doesn't, so Grace chooses his friend. Back on Earth, Eva Strat receives the probes carrying the Taumiba and Grace's research. The information gives scientists the solution they need to fight the astrophage and save the Sun. Meanwhile, Grace and Rocky continue toward Arid. The journey is difficult, but they eventually reach Rocky's home planet. The Iridians are overjoyed to see Rocky alive. And when they discover that Grace sacrificed his journey home to save their world, they don't treat him as a prisoner or an outsider. They treat him as a friend. The Iridians build Grace a special habitat where he can safely breed, eat, and live despite being completely different from them. For the first time, Grace has a home again. Years pass. Grace eventually becomes a teacher. But his students aren't human children. They're Iridian children. He teaches them science, mathematics, and everything he remembers about Earth. And strangely enough, Grace seems happier than he ever was back home. Then Rocky brings him unexpected news. The Iridian scientists have confirmed that Earth's sun has recovered. The mission worked. Humanity survived. Grace's sacrifice wasn't meaningless. Earth is safe. And the Iridians are safe too. Rocky also tells Grace that the Hail Mary has been repaired. If Grace wants to return to Earth, he now has a way to go home. Grace looks at his friend. He thinks about Earth. He thinks about everything he lost. Then he looks at the Iridian children waiting for their science lesson. And he realizes something. He doesn't need to go back yet. Earth is safe. Rocky is alive. And he has finally found a place where he belongs. So Grace continues teaching. The man who once believed he wasn't brave enough to save humanity has become the person who willingly sacrificed his way home to save another world. He began the mission as a reluctant teacher who was forced into space. He ends it as a teacher once again. Only this time, his students are aliens. And that is the emotional heart of Project Hail Mary. The mission wasn't ultimately about defeating an alien enemy. It was about cooperation. Two completely different species faced the same extinction-level threat. Instead of destroying each other, they shared knowledge. They trusted each other. And they saved one another. Grace thought he was traveling to Tau Ceti to save humanity. Instead, he discovered that humanity's greatest strength might be its ability to form connections with someone completely different. And Rocky proves exactly the same thing. The universe is enormous. Earth is only one tiny world. Humanity is only one species. But even across 12 light years, two beings who couldn't even communicate at first managed to become best friends. Grace finally understands that going home doesn't always mean returning to the place where you started. Sometimes, home is simply where you find the people who give your life meaning. And for Ryland Grace, that place is now arid. Years later, Grace is living on Arid. The Iridian scientists have created a safe environment where he can breathe, eat, and survive despite the planet's extreme conditions. Rocky is still his closest friend, and the two continue sharing scientific knowledge between their civilizations. Then Rocky brings Grace some incredible news. Earth's sun has returned to normal. The Taumiba solution worked. Humanity survived. The mission succeeded. Grace's sacrifice was not in vain. The Iridians also tell him that they have built a new spacecraft capable of taking him back to Earth. For the first time in years, Grace has the option to go home. But he doesn't immediately say yes. He looks around at the world he now lives in. The students he teaches. The people who accepted him. And especially Rocky, the friend he once thought he would never see again. Grace realizes that home isn't necessarily the place where you were born. Sometimes home is the place where you finally discover who you are. So he returns to his classroom. A group of young Iridian students waits for him. Grace begins another science lesson, just as he did on Earth. Only now, his students aren't human. They're aliens. And instead of teaching them because he has nowhere else to go, he teaches because he genuinely loves it. The story has come full circle. At the beginning, Grace was a reluctant teacher who didn't believe he was brave enough to save humanity. He tried to escape the responsibility. He was terrified of dying. He wanted someone else to take his place. But by the end, he becomes the exact opposite. He willingly gives up his chance to return home to save Rocky. He risks everything for someone from a completely different species. And he proves that courage isn't about being fearless. It's about caring enough to act even when you're afraid. Rocky also changes Grace's understanding of friendship. They can't even speak the same language when they first meet. They have completely different bodies, different environments, different cultures, yet they manage to build one of the strongest friendships imaginable. Two strangers from distant worlds become partners, scientists, and eventually family. And that is the real heart of Project Hail Mary. The movie begins with humanity facing extinction. But instead of ending with humanity defeating an enemy, it ends with two civilizations helping each other survive. Earth is saved, Arid is saved, Rocky survives, Grace survives, and the man who once believed he wasn't brave enough to save the world finds a new purpose on another planet. He may never return to Earth, but he has finally found peace. The greatest distance in the story wasn't the 12 light years between Earth and Tau Ceti. It was the distance between the person Grace was at the beginning and the person he becomes at the end. He started as a man running away from responsibility. He ends as someone willing to sacrifice everything for a friend. And sometimes, that's what makes someone a hero. Not saving the world alone, but making sure nobody has to face the impossible alone.